corporate media covers this kind of stuff up. We need a lot more independent media to show you amazing examples like this of what they actually think about their own product.
I disagree with you entirely.
Yeah, for poor people. Who buys a I don't buy Campbell products barely anymore. So healthy. Now that I know what the in it. Even in a can of soup, I look at it, look at meat, bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer. You?
Definitely do not want to eat a piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer, but the voice that you heard in that audio is Campbell's Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer, Martin Bally, and his honest opinion about the products that his company sells and the customers he sells them to. So we'll hear even more of his comments, but first, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, look guys, this is a great example of what corporations are up to when you're not looking, which is almost all the time. And part of the reason is, sorry, broken record, corporate media covers this kind of stuff up. We need a lot more independent media to show you amazing examples like this of what they actually think about their own product.
I disagree with you entirely, okay? I don't think media has any impact on this whatsoever. I think that there's been extensive reporting on the absolute slop the American people are fed by these deregulated corporations. There's been endless reporting about how our FDA has been corrupted by moneyed interests. There's been endless reporting on the USDA and some of the poor decisions they've made, and how our government does a poor job representing us. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we don't live in a healthy democratic system. And anyone who's gonna write to me and say, oh, we're actually a constitutional republic. You know what I mean, okay? We live in a democratic system in which we vote for people who are supposed to represent us. That's what I'm talking about. They don't care about us. And the reason why they don't care about us is because we have bribery baked into our political system. And so they're always gonna look out for their donors. They don't care about us.
But Anna, so like I hear you.
It's for you, it's always the media.
But Anna, why? Hold on.
Okay.
So I hear you, and you're making a really great point in this case. Okay. But what is the missing link in that media story?
What do you think is going to happen if the media does more reporting on this? We just
I know what's going to happen.
The New York Times literally just reported on Huckabee meeting with a traitor to the United States, and nothing happened. Nothing ever happened.
And why did nothing happen?
Because our government doesn't care about us, Cenk.
Exactly, but there's a second missing link, Anna, which is what did the rest of the media then pile onto that Huckabee story? No, corporate media said, we're not going to talk about that story. Now, it could deeply embarrass Trump, and they love embarrassing Trump, but if it's about Israel, no, that's it, we're not going to do it. Now, related to this story.
Everyone's talking about this.
Okay.
Everyone's talking about this.
Okay, everybody's talking about this.
Yeah.
And when we go to regulate Campbell's Soup, as you're going to see, it definitely needs regulation when you see the story. What is corporate media going to say? It's overregulation. And we're gonna say, hey, no, but these guys are paying off the politicians. They're gonna say, oh, that sounds conspiratorial. The donors don't have that much power. It's just a little bit of influence, but it's not that big a deal. They cover up the most important part, that our politicians are corrupt because they work for these corporations. And the corporate media says, no, they don't. No, you guys are all imagining it, and they gaslight you. No, of course they work for them. Otherwise, we'd go, what the hell kind of junk are you feeding us, literally? So let's tell them the junk that they're feeding us.
So the audio was released as part of a lawsuit, an employment discrimination and retaliation lawsuit that was brought up by a former security analyst for Campbell Soup Company. The former employee's name is Robert Garza. Now, according to Newsweek, the lawsuit indicates, and interviews Garza gave to local media indicate that the claims stem from a recorded meeting between Garza and Campbell's vice president and chief information security officer, Martin Bally. Garza, who began working remotely for the company in September of 2024, said he met Bally at a restaurant in late 2024, believing they would be discussing his salary. Now, Garza says that he started recording the meeting because he had an instinct that something wasn't right with Martin. Now, since the case, by the way, is being brought up in Michigan, the recording is legal since it's a one-party consent state. You don't need consent from both parties to record. I just want to get that out of the way. Now, Garza's gut instinct was right because within a few minutes, Martin Bally went off. Garza alleges the executive delivered an hour-long tirade criticizing the company's products, disparaging employees and customers, and making racially offensive remarks about Indian colleagues. The recording also allegedly captured Bally admitting he came to work after consuming marijuana edibles, which I don't care about at all. I'm just gonna be clear about that. Now, the recording, which lasted longer than an hour and 15 minutes, included what Garza said was a disgusting rant alleged to be made by Bally about his coworkers. Effing Indians don't know a effing thing. I am quoting, by the way, what Bally said. And like they couldn't think for their effing selves, it said in part. Garza also said that he kept the audio to himself for a few months to process things. Then he went to his manager in January to report Bally's behavior, but he ended up getting terminated from his position 20 days after reporting the matter, an action that Garza believes was meant to silence him. Now, Garza also told reporters that the recording, or that he received no follow-up from Human Resources after submitting the complaint. The lawsuit accuses Campbell Soup Company of maintaining a racially hostile work environment and retaliating against Garza for reporting discriminatory conduct. It asserts claims of employment discrimination and race-based retaliation under Michigan law. So, there's other examples of what was said. So he had no record, Garza had no record of prior disciplinary action. I should note that as well. So his firing was obviously retaliation based on what we know. There might be other information that we're not privy to at the moment. So Campbell's has since put Bally on temporary leave with a spokesperson saying that if the recording is legitimate, the comments are unacceptable. They do not reflect our values and the culture of our company. Mr. Bally is temporarily on leave while we conduct an investigation. We are proud of the food we make, the people who make it, and the high quality ingredients we use. The comments on the recording are not only inaccurate, they are patently absurd. So
sure.
They say that their chicken is not printed with a 3D printer.
Yeah. He didn't mean it literally, and we all know that. His main point was the food is inedible. It is mystery meat, and we feed it to poor people because they don't have a choice, and I would never eat that stuff. So that's what he's saying. We heard it on the tape, right? And that is not ridiculous, that is true.
Yep.
And that is why they're panicking over this story. So now now we all know, and look, the part about his Indian coworkers is terrible. If you're Indian and this guy apparently hates you and doesn't respect you at all based on your race, you'd be deeply bothered by that, right? So that's something that needs to be addressed and is a significant issue. But the bigger issue for the whole country is these companies are putting absolute junk in the food, and our country and our government is doing nothing to protect us. And so Make America Healthy Again came about because people were worried about that. The processed foods, the high fructose corn syrup, etc. right? That's actually not a bad development. And then RFK Jr. becomes the head of Health and Human Services. Did he address any of that so far? Nope. Instead, rando things about autism and Tylenol and a bag of squirrels, okay?
Adding or loosening restrictions on PFAS, on in the food supply, all sorts of issues with pesticides being reintroduced to our food supply. I mean, what happened?
So does RFK Jr. want to actually address those issues?
No, obviously not.
Well, look, based on his history, I can see that he did. But now he gets into power and all of a sudden he doesn't do it. So even if you believe that in his heart, RFK Jr. really wants to fight those issues, fight for us on those issues, why isn't he doing it? Corporate power, we all know that, right? In fact, he suggested something about food processing and how it was problematic. And immediately the Trump administration told him to shut up and never bring that up again. And he's never brought it up again. And instead you have these squirrels running around. Why? Because of overwhelming corporate power. Why do they have that power? What is it? That's the last link that they don't break down for you. It's the bribery. They literally pay the politicians, not just Trump and Biden, but almost all of Congress. and they go, make sure that you allow us to poison the American people. And here's a check to do that, Mr. Corrupt dirtbag politician, okay? And remember, don't eat our food, okay? It's toxic, it's terrible. It's for the poors and the middle class Americans, right?
That's all of us, by the way.
Yeah, now the elites don't eat that, so you don't have to worry about it, and here's your check. And then media, in my opinion, comes around and goes, oh, no. Of course, that's just them having a conversation. It doesn't influence the politicians at all. They just happen to think that junk in the food is great for America. That's their honest opinion. They had a debate over it. No, they didn't. What did Adam Smith tell us? He said, we have to do regulations in order for capitalism to survive. If you don't do regulations, monopolies take over. And corporate rule takes over, and it destroys capitalism. And that's what's happening right now. And our politicians are participating and literally feeding us this pile of junk so that they can get richer.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think I'm just sick of nothing changing and everything getting worse. And I don't want this, but honestly, with things going the way that they're going, the only end game is gonna be an actual violent uprising. And I don't want that. I don't want that. But the more Americans feel neglected by our political system and the very people they elect to represent them in their best interests, the more we're fed poison and slop by these corporations. There was another outbreak of botulism cases involving baby formula. Another breakout, another one. We're talking about baby formula. This doesn't happen, at least not with the same frequency, in other countries. We're supposed to be the richest country in the world. Look at the way we're living. Look at the way Americans are treated by corporations and their own government.
You know, in other countries, they have signs like saying no American meat, so you can rest assured. You can trust our restaurant. Now, why do they have that sign? Because they want to just insult America for no reason? No, they actually are worried about our meat because we don't properly vet our meat. Our Food and Drug Administration has been totally bought by corporate power. So we've been on the air forever. We're the longest running show in online history, right? So I remember covering the stories during mad cow disease when the meat industry would literally stand up cows that fell down from mad cow disease and push them through the assembly line to make an extra, what, $5, $50 from that particular cow, but it's gonna poison the American people, and by the way, then be so counterproductive because then it's gonna shut down a lot of things, right? But they think, no, greed and endless greed, and they have this enormous confidence, and they're not wrong about this. Oh, don't worry, we'll just pay the politicians to cover it up.
And they will, and they will, and they do.
And that's what's happened. And here, I'll give you one last example to give you how comprehensive corporate politicians and corporate media work together to do this to us. Archer Daniel Midland is an agriculture company. They sell nothing to the average American, yet they would pay $1 million a year to the Sunday talk shows to sponsor them. I always found that strange, right? And sometimes defense contractors do the same thing, even though they also sell nothing to the public. The reason they do that is to purchase the media, the hosts. So that way the hosts never talk about the corn subsidies. The corn subsidies is a disaster for this country. Why? Because it leads to an incentive to create high fructose corn syrup. What's Mexican Coke? It's just old school Coke, it's not Mexican. It's what we used to produce in Atlanta, right? But we don't produce it anymore. Instead of sugar, we use high fructose corn syrup, which is way worse for us. And one of the reasons why this country is way more obese than other countries. But because of the subsidies, they got to do that. But yet none of the Sunday talk shows for all those decades ever talked about the corn subsidies. Why? Because they had been bribed by Archer Daniels Midland to the tune of $1 million a year to not talk about it. Same thing for Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all the defense contractors. They bought the media and the politicians, and they had this country on lockdown. That's why I love these populist woods that we're in. Because now we're doing online shows that do not listen to that junk and that tell you the truth, and we're battering corporate media, and we have begun to batter corporate politicians, which is nearly 98% of them. Go in the primaries, vote against almost all the incumbents. They have betrayed you, and they work for corporate rule and not for you. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. totally not true. But it does keep you updated on our live shows.